It's been almost a week since we got the Mueller report, and we now have a little bit of context on how people have interpreted its findings, what the Democrats appear to be doing strategically in the wake of it. And to talk about that and related issues, we are lucky enough to be joined now by investigative reporter and founder of DCReport.org, David Cay Johnston. Welcome back to the Damage Report.
Glad to be here, John.
Glad to have, always glad to have you here to talk about the important issues. So in past appearances on the show, we've made some light predictions about what we thought might be in the Mueller report. Now that you've seen it, you've seen what's in it and also what's not in it. What are your thoughts?
Well, the important thing is that Bill Barr lied through his teeth about what's in this report, but because he got out there first, the news herd is going to go with a narrative that is now muddied. The report is very clear. There were repeated efforts by the Trump administration to work with the Russians, and the Russians were actively, and there's no dispute that about this point, actively trying to interfere with the American election. And not once did anybody on the Trump side do their duty. There is an astonishing observation in the report. You know the old adage, ignorance is no defense. Ignorance of the law is no defense. Well, Mueller argues that Don Jr. may have been too stupid to understand that when the Russian government, through an emissary, offered to help his father's campaign, that his duty was to pick up the phone, call the FBI, and ask to speak to someone in counterintelligence. But the report makes it clear that they tried and tried. Unfortunately, they were blocked by the destruction of evidence, the use of encrypted emails, the refusal of people to testify, et cetera. So there is more than enough here to say that gross improprieties took place, and while they may not meet the criminal standard of guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, that's not the constitutional standard for a president.
And so I want to turn to what I have long considered to be the most important part of this process is the precedent that could be set if the president is able to, president are able to impede investigations. Because it's one thing, many people are not interested in whatever's going to be found in this, or they don't think that it's that significant, it's being overblown, all of that. But they might well want a future president to be investigated for a variety of different potential crimes or corruption. And to me, I read what's in there as the most clear examples of potential obstruction of justice imaginable. If it doesn't rise to that level, I don't know what that term is supposed to mean. And yet I still see people, obviously the Trump supporters are gonna interpret it their way, but I see people saying that it's sort of up for debate, or they're not really sure if it actually rises to the level of obstruction of justice. What do you make of that?
Well, unfortunately, the vast majority of Americans, like Donald Trump, have never read our Constitution and don't know what's in it. We will have a piece up later today at DC Report that goes through the law about this and explains to people the court decisions. Trump is relying in part on a court decision from the communist witch hunt days in the 50s in believing that it is not legitimate for Congress to investigate him because the Democrats are in control of the House. That's absolute poppycock. And it is in fact been argued by former President Woodrow Wilson that the investigative function of Congress is more important than the legislative function of Congress in some cases. So what you're going to see now are a whole series of efforts to investigate. Congress has power here. In the past, Congress has arrested people, tried them, and incarcerated them for refusing to cooperate. I don't think the Democrats are going to go that far. It hasn't been done in more than a century. But they can fine people. There's been talk of $25,000 a day. And the first big test, I suspect, is going to come from Charles Rettig, the Beverly Hills lawyer to wealthy tax cheats who get caught, who is the IRS commissioner. He is the person charged under law with turning over Trump's tax returns. Steve Mnuchin, his supervisor, the Treasury Secretary, has said that they want until May 6th to get an opinion from the Justice Department on whether they have to turn them over. It shouldn't take more than 20 seconds to read the law, Section 6103, which says that upon written request, the IRS shall furnish documents to Congress, as it's been doing routinely and without a single break in the chain since that law took effect 95 years ago. And there is another provision in the law, 7214, that says that if Reddick fails to do this, he shall be removed from office. Of course, that would require integrity on the part of the Trump administration, and he can be prosecuted. But if Trump is voted out in 2020, Reddick could be arrested, indicted, prosecuted, and if convicted, I would expect he would go to prison and he would lose his law license. So a bunch of Trump people are soon going to face the prospect of cooperating with Congress or being willing to go to jail to protect Donald Trump from constitutional process.
Exactly, and it makes you wonder, we've talked about the taxes before, it makes you wonder what would be in there that would both lead Donald Trump to be willing to order his subordinates to not cooperate with these investigations and things like that, but also that someone would be willing to go to jail to make sure that it doesn't come out. I've seen that you've been talking a little bit on social media about the taxes recently. Right. What is your current working hypothesis for why exactly they're going to these lanes?
Well, to make clear, I'm the person who revealed in 1990 that Trump wasn't a billionaire. He called me a liar for months until he had to reveal a document showing he had a negative net worth of $295 million. And I got his 2005 tax return that showed he had bought an illegal tax shelter. It was made illegal within weeks of when he bought it, but Congress allowed those who'd already bought these tax shelters to keep their ill-got gains. The New York Times, where I used to work, in a definitive piece, stated as fact that Donald Trump is a tax cheat. And I can state that as fact because he had two tax fraud trials, civil trials, in over his 1984 tax return. And he not only lost both of them, which are in my biography, The Making of Donald Trump, but he was excoriated by the judges, and his own longtime tax lawyer and CPA, Jack Mitnick, testified against him at those trials. So first of all, Donald knows that a thorough audit will establish he's a tax cheat. And that's what happened to Richard Nixon when under Section 6103, Congress got his tax returns. It turned out Nixon had illegally taken a deduction worth in today's money almost $3.5 million. His tax lawyer went to jail. Nixon did not, only because he was pardoned by Jerry Ford. Secondly, the tax returns will put us on a path to seeing where money came from. There are plenty of transactions that Trump has done that I've written about, which make no economic sense with Russians and Saudis and Emiratis and others, but they make perfect sense if he's laundering money for them. And I think that just as it's very clear that Donald Trump was an unindicted cocaine trafficker in business with Joseph Wexelbaum and is the named individual one but unindicted participant in some of the crimes for which his lawyer, Michael Cohen, is going to prison, that Donald Trump, we will find out with a thorough audit, was laundering money.
And we will have to wait to see if we ever get that thorough audit. But until then, David Cay Johnston, always glad to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching this clip from The Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.